Morphin time! Dragon Sword! Mastodon!
Pterodactyl!
Triceratops!
Saber-tooth tiger!
Tyrannosaurus!
Go, go, Power Rangers! Go, go, Power Rangers! Go, go, Power Rangers! You mighty morphin Power Rangers!
Yes, it's morphin time here on episode 5 of Talks with Dorks. Episode 5 is exactly what it says on the tin. It's morphin time. That means we're going to be talking about the one and only Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. But my name's Ryan, and I'm not alone. As always, I'm here with my good friend, my fellow Ranger. It's Ash. How you doing?
Hey, y'all.
Oh, you went Scott Hall this... Sorry, Razor Ramon this week.
Yeah, Reza Ramon.
You couldn't have
And
said
can I just say as well, that intro took the absolute piss.
What? Because it was so long.
It was a fucking minute long intro.
But it was well worth it. I had to. When it's going to be an episode about Power Rangers, you know full well I'm going to go all out. That was sick, though. Do you know what I mean? Go, go, Power Rangers. Speaking of music, we'll talk more about Power Rangers music later. But how are you feeling about doing an episode on Power Rangers, Ash?
I think I'm more excited that you're excited. Because I know you're a massive fan of Power Rangers.
What would give you that idea? Staring at my screen and seeing a big collection of Power Rangers toys?
Oh yeah, no one can obviously actually see this, but your entire back wall is from wall to wall Power Rangers memorabilia merchandise.
And
it's ridiculous.
It's not even that. I've literally got a shelf above my head that you can't see full of Power Ranger stuff as well. That's all the Funko Pops.
Yeah, that does not surprise me one bit.
But he says that while sat there in a Blue Ranger t-shirt with a Blue Ranger doll on show as well. Where did you get them from, by the way?
From you. I'm showing you my support as well.
Yeah, see? I've got my Green Ranger t-shirt. I've got my little Green Ranger figure to match yours. This is Power Rangers. And the good thing about this is this... We spoke about how retro gaming before, was a big part of our past, but Power Rangers is pretty much sums up the start, middle, and end of our entire friendship. It's always gone back to Power Rangers.
That was the first thing that me and you had in common. I think that's the first thing we spoke about when I met you was Power Rangers, because it was the big thing at that moment in time. It must have only not long ago started when I met you.
Exactly. Well, yeah, it was fresh. It was the biggest thing in kids' TV at the time. And we're going to go... Well, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about all different kinds of things, and we're going to start with the start. We're going to go straight into the beginning. Power Rangers is, like I said, a big part of our history, but it's a big part because of how it came to us and where it started, the whole Power Rangers phenomenon, because we were 6-7 years old.
Yeah, what year did it actually start?
1993 is when it
93.
93.
So, yeah. So he was about 7-8 years old then.
Yeah, exactly. And so I asked you briefly before, you don't remember the first time you watched Power Rangers, do you?
No, I mean, I remember watching it on GMTV, along with a lot of other stuff. I don't remember, off the top of my head, I couldn't remember the first episode. If you told me the bad guy or the monster from the first episode, I'd probably know it, remembering it, because I think I watched it about 3-4 years ago again when it was on Netflix with my daughter. My daughter just picked it up and started watching it purely because of my nephew is big into Power Rangers still to this day.
Good lad.
Just goes to show how long the freaking thing's been going on for, that it's still going on today. But because he watched it, Isabel started watching it, and I kind of brought up the fact that I was like, I don't like the current ones. And I was just telling her that if you watch the originals, they are 10 times better. So she went back to watch the originals. And I remember sitting down for a couple of the first ones with her and rewatching them.
And that's a major part of why we're saying that this is Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I mean, yes, I appreciate all the other seasons of Power Rangers, and I've seen some of them, but I'm a huge fan. There's one thing on my wall that isn't Power Rangers, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and that's the Gold Rangers staff, which I've got, which is from Power Rangers Zeo, but that's because it was in the same collection as what I was buying, so I had to get it, and I got it quite cheap. So that's the only reason. I'm pure Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
So you remember the first time you watched it? You remember sitting down to that first episode?
Right, I remember. My memories, and this is what I've been dying to say, is it was a morning before school, and I remember that pretty sure it was GMTV that it was on in the UK, and they were doing this big thing. They've got this new show from America coming about this team of superheroes, and it was like at the time. Do you remember Mr. Motivator?
Yeah. How can you forget Mr. Motivator? Anyone around in the early 90s knows Mr. Motivator.
Right, so he was always on before the episodes of Power Rangers. So when you knew that Mr. Motivator was on, you knew that it was going to be followed by Power Rangers. So from one colourful character to 5 of them, then 6, it was going on. But I remember sitting there and it was like, oh, what's this new show? And like I said, I was 7 years old. And I'm like, what's this new show? Am I going to like this? And then it started. And this whole idea of a group of superheroes that were given these coins and morphers, and they had to shout the name of their dinosaur, was the coolest fucking thing I'd seen in a long time. I just remember going, oh my God, if they shout Tyrannosaurus, they're going to be a Red Ranger. And then they get given what inevitably is like a constructor bot from Transformers. 5 different vehicles come together to make a Megazord and going to take on the bad guys. And the answer to your question of who the bad guy was in the first one, it was Goldar, originally.
Was it Goldar?
Yeah, Goldar.
My man. I love Goldar. He was probably one of my favourite. He was the constant, though. They had a few that was always on it, didn't they? And Goldar was always... Because he was a badass, man. He was a fucking blue wolf in a massive coat of, like, knight's armour that was complete gold and a dirty, great big broadsword.
And that voice, you can't... I mean, the voice slightly changed in the second season to the one you probably remember, but that voice... Oh, yeah, I'm Goldar.
So it was Macho Man.
Yeah, basically, it was Macho Man. He's actually a guy called Kerrigan Mahan, I think his name, voiced him. And he does, like, a lot of conventions and stuff. And he, like, I suppose if you... I think he does, like, personal videos and stuff like that, like them cameo things, but does them in conventions where he does the voice. But that's got to hurt to do, like, that kind of voice. That hurt me, just doing that slight little impersonation there.
I must admit, going back and watching Goldar again on some of the episodes with my daughter, he did have a bit of a doofus-like voice, didn't it? It could have been a bit more sinister and scary.
I think that was the idea, though. It was like kind of like it was, yeah, but it was for a kids show as well. Do you know what I mean? It couldn't be too dark. Like, I'm gonna fucking kill you, Rangers, or something like that. Could you imagine? So yeah, I remember obviously going back to that first episode. At the end of it, by the end of that episode, I was in my front room trying to make anything into like a Power Rangers costume. I wanted to be a Power Ranger from that moment, and I'm 34 years old now, and I still want to be a Power Ranger. That's how much I loved that show. After that, you had this idea of 5 young, they were teenagers, and we were like 7, so we were like just a few years away from being teenagers. Like the thought that could be me in a few years was bam, mind blowing. I mean, they were teenagers, but realistically, they looked about 25. But you didn't think that.
Yeah, they
7.
did look like teenagers.
It
was no Saved by the Bell.
The youngest one of them all, I believe, was Jason David Frank, aka Tommy, when he arrived. I think he was 17. Or no, maybe Jason. One of them two, one of the red or green, one of them was the youngest, guys, but looked the older out of all of them. They both looked like the oldest out of the group. So when that phenomenon sort of took over, it then spawned into this, like, it went from just this new TV show to an absolute phenomenon overnight. Like, everywhere you went and looked, there was Power Rangers.
Oh, yeah, the toys, for one thing. The toys was that, like, must-have. I remember my next-door neighbour had every single one of the fucking toys, like, every one of the Zords, all the weapons. He had everything. We was always around there playing with them. And then, obviously, you came along as well. And then I think we shared out the weapons as well.
I think we all, like, I'm pretty sure that one of the memories I remember is us literally saying, right, you're going to be the Green Ranger, you're going to be the Red Ranger, so you kept them weapons. Nobody else was allowed to touch them. Yeah, they were your weapons. I have them.
The good thing is I feel like no one ever wanted to be, my favourite character was the Blue Ranger. And no one ever wanted to be in it. We was always arguing over who was going to be the Red Ranger to start with. And then obviously when Tommy came along, it was, who's going to be the Green Ranger? And then who's going to be the White Ranger? It was always the main guy. But I was just like, I don't give a shit, man. I'm Blue Ranger. I like the dorky guys with.
Basically, what you're saying is that me and Ricky used to want to fight the hell out of each other just for wanting to be the most popular Ranger. Like, I want to be the Red Ranger. I want to be the Red Ranger. Then Tommy came along. You can be the Red Ranger. I'm being the Green Ranger.
Yeah, just straight up throw down. Just have a fight over it. Because can you imagine how many injuries there was after that came out? All the kids just like beating the piss out of their little sister, pretending they're a Power Ranger or something.
Well, like, it's one of those things at that time, like we've discussed, like Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter came out at the same time, Power Rangers, WWF was out there bringing characters to life. And we were just
prior to the "Don't try this at home" warning.
Yeah. So basically, and the Karate Kid was still a big thing. We were just basically being taught to just kick the hell out of our siblings, but I didn't have any, so I'd just go and kick my dad in the leg, and then get chased around the house.
And then, like, because you was, I think, about 6 foot tall from the age of 7 anyway, so you towered over us.
I may have been 6 foot tall from a young age, but you've been 2 foot tall since the age of 3. So come on, man. And
yeah, still haven't grown either.
No, exactly. I've always stayed this tall. You've just stayed that short. We're a great combination. And by the way, I don't know why I just said I didn't have any siblings. I had siblings, but they just weren't of my age. They were all a lot older than me. So yeah. My dad used to chase me around the front room. So he was like my Goldar. He chased me around. Oh, come here, you little shit. Chasing me around the front room. But right, so Power Rangers took off, and we were talking about toys, right? So, like you said, Ricky, your neighbour had all of them. No matter what came out, he had everything. But do you remember what ones you had as a kid specifically?
I didn't really have that much. I had the action figures, but that was all I had. I didn't really have anything else in terms of the Power Rangers type merchandise. I had a lot of Ghostbusters and Transformers, and I think it was all around that era. I think it was a kind of a Transformers-y type era for me then, but I didn't have too many of the Power Rangers toys.
But like you said,
I suppose I didn't need to. I just literally bought them all around, and we just played with them all. So.
You had the neighbour that had everything. So like, you play with my Transformers, I'm going to play with your Power Rangers, and then I'd come over with my stuff like, let's double up. Let's do it. But like Power Rangers just like took off, like not just for us, but for completely across the world. I mean, we got the UK version of it. Like over in America, this thing was even bigger. Like they started doing live tours that were like blocking cities and shit like that. In Los Angeles, there was like a 10-mile tailback of people trying to get into the Power Rangers live show around this time as well, because it just went amazingly, phenomenally massive everywhere.
Yeah.
But do you know that like the where it came from, why we got Power Rangers, and like the Japanese version of where it started?
No, I mean, like, I didn't know back then. I know now that it came from a Japanese show that they done years before. Was it years before? Was it around about the same time?
It was basically, it started, it was called, the Power Rangers that we know, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, was called Zeo Ranger. But it's a series of Japanese, like a TV series in Japan called Super Sentai. Up at that point, I think Mighty Morphin or Zeo Ranger was like the 14th or 15th version of it. But we took it as our first Power Rangers, or not we didn't, not me and you, but Haim Saban took that idea and turned it into an American show and just bought the rights. So then all they had to do realistically was hire the human side of it, and all the footage was there for them of all the Power Rangers in suits and all the Megazords and all the bad guys. I mean, you can look back now.
So they reused the fighting clips, did they?
Yeah. So, but one of the big things that you'll notice when you see, like, obviously they did film stuff with the Power Rangers or the actors that we know as the Power Rangers, but it was different. You can see there are certain differences. Like, one of the big things is when they introduced the Green Ranger, it was his shield. Like, I think we've discussed this before. You can see the difference of when it's the American footage and the Japanese, because the American version is like they didn't have enough money to make a proper shield. It looked like a flimsy, unironed version of the Green Ranger shield. Whereas
it looked like a fancy dress one that you just buy from your local fancy dress shop. It was that floppy kind of foam gold shoulder pads, weren't it?
But then when you're looking at the Japanese in the Zeo Ranger footage that was used, it's like a solid green, so you knew it was the actual footage. And like going into like the Zeo Ranger, that was obviously similar storyline in the sense of like a lot of the monsters, and Rita was part of the Japanese footage, but it was a lot darker toned. Like the whole thing was a lot darker and a bit scarier, because obviously we've mentioned that, but obviously the introduction of a sixth Ranger, Tommy, he gets introduced about halfway through the first season. And do you remember that? Yeah. Do you remember Green with Evil?
If that's the one where Tommy starts coming into it, or where with the Green Ranger, where they start introducing it, I remember parts of the bit where they start introducing Tommy as the Green Ranger, but I don't remember it step by step of the episode that was, or